Welcome back to the 10-Minute Blitz Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Langdon. And if you didn't know, recently this last weekend, the 2025 NFL Draft just wrapped up, where big players are going to be heading to new organizations. It's going to be a fun one to talk about. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the 2025 NFL Draft. So getting right into the NFL Draft, it generally went as expected. Starting off, you had the Tennessee Titans at the number 1 overall pick. And with the number 1 overall pick, the Tennessee Titans selected Cam Ward, the quarterback out of Miami. And if you don't know, I love Cam Ward's story. This was a phenomenal pick, in my opinion. It was really incredible, if you didn't know, how Cam Ward went from a 0-star recruit out of high school to the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. And it's just an incredible journey from going to high school where you transfer into college and then eventually you end up in Miami. And that's really where you got the accolades and eventually was a runner-up for the Heisman this last year and eventually now leads him to the draft where he's the number 1 overall pick. Love the story. You could tell how emotional he was, how far he's come. So I'm incredibly happy for Cam Ward. And overall, as a player, his abilities are really good in my opinion. He has great scrambling ability. He has a good deep ball, good accuracy. And it'll be interesting to see if he's a day 1 starter as the Tennessee Titans still do have to deal with the whole Will Levis situation. How are they going to handle it? It's going to be interesting to see if they're going to be trying to put Will Levis against Cam Ward and see who kind of comes out on top as a day 1 starter for the next season. But that'll be interesting to see how that kind of progresses over the summer. And this is where it also got exciting with the number 2 overall pick. Now, originally the Cleveland Browns had the number 2 overall pick, but then there was a big trade. And it's even more crazier because leading up to this, a whole bunch of analysts were saying, Cleveland, they really like Travis Hunter out of Colorado. He's a cornerback. He's a wide receiver. He's a dual threat. The Cleveland Browns really like where they're at, and they're not going to be trading away that pick under no circumstances unless there's a really big trade compensation deal to get that pick. And no one thought it was going to happen until draft night, and it eventually came with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were at pick 5, and they traded up to the 2nd overall pick with the Cleveland Browns, and they gave up a pretty big compensation. They gave away a few picks as well as their number 1 pick next year. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of works out. But it was one of the most surprising moves, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Jaguars actually move on from here, because the Jaguars, with the 2nd overall pick, did select wide receiver and cornerback star Travis Hunter from Colorado. But the main question I have, was it worth giving up the next year's first-round pick? And really, it's a tough one for me. It's a really tough one because I'm excited to see where this could go from here, because I think Hunter has a lot of potential in the NFL. I've seen other outlets such as CBS Sports list Hunter's NFL comparison as Vikings standout wide receiver Justin Jefferson, and then Dolphins' Jalen Ramsey from Miami, who is considered to be one of the better cornerbacks in the league. And I'm just really curious, will he live up to this? Because if he can be a Justin Jefferson type player, a big playmaker, then I would say it's definitely worth giving up this year and next year's first round pick, even though if you're trading back a little bit. I think it's going to be interesting to see where it goes from here and where exactly Hunter will kind of stand when it comes to being a wide receiver and being a cornerback. And my main question is, will Liam Cohen let him do both? Because Liam Cohen is going into his first year as a head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's going to be interesting. Will he let Travis Hunter play both sides of the ball like he did in Colorado on offense as wide receiver, but also on defense as cornerback? As again, these comparisons in the NFL of Justin Jefferson and Jalen Ramsey could be pretty great. If the Jacksonville Jaguars can work it out, I think it could be really good. But I think it's going to be tough, though. If you do allow him to do both, here's the one thing I have concerns with. Let's say he's going against the Miami Dolphins. If he's on offense, he's going to have to be running routes, and he's going against Jalen Ramsey, and then you're going to have to go back on defense and play corner, and you're going to have to be guarding Tyreek Hill. And my main question is, can he really go back and forth of switching between the 2 roles without a break and really just keep it up? I feel like it's really not possible to actually get good reps if you're just going back and forth. And most of all, it just seems like you'll be exhausted from all that. And I don't know if it's actually achievable in the long run. But it's interesting. Maybe they'll start off with smaller reps, maybe not as much offense or not as much defense. It'll be interesting. Personally, I believe if they had to go one route to start off with, I believe they'll go with wide receiver to start, and then maybe throw in some defensive reps there to start and see how it goes from there. Maybe they'll increase the defensive reps as it goes on and see how he goes from there. And then what I want to talk about, this is really the third biggest storyline I wanted to talk about in the NFL, and it really compares to a movie that comes to mind for me, and that is Draft Day, and this is Shedeur Sanders. Now, Shedeur Sanders, there has never really been a bigger draft fall-off like Shedeur Sanders' draft status when it comes to value. So, for months, if you didn't know, Shedeur Sanders was expected to be taken by mock drafts for months by the Cleveland Browns, the New York Giants, the Las Vegas Raiders, or the Pittsburgh Steelers, but apparently that didn't matter as he was not even selected in the first round, and I'm hearing that people weren't liking his ego, and they weren't liking the connection with his dad, and they didn't want any part of that, and they took him off of their draft boards. And this does remind me of Draft Day, where Browns GM Sonny Weaver originally traded for Bo Callahan to pick him, but then he proceeded not like the characteristics, like players weren't going to Bo Callahan's birthday party, and Sonny Weaver kind of saw that as a little bit of a concern and decided to trade back with Seattle and got 3 more players while Seattle got Callahan. And it really just reminds me of Shedeur Sanders here with the Browns. They were I would say they're the biggest contender to get Shedeur Sanders, and then they ended up passing on him. They got Mason Graham, the defensive end, out of Michigan in the first round, and then they proceeded to pass on Shedeur Sanders for the first 5 rounds, and so did everybody else, and then eventually traded back up for him in the 5th round at pick 144 and got Shedeur Sanders. So it's going to be really interesting how this works out. I think Shedeur Sanders is really the second best QB in this draft besides Cam Ward. But one of the biggest questions is, how did he fall so far down, and how do you have other QBs picked over him? He had Tyler Shaw picked over him. You had Jalen Milroe picked over him. You had Jackson Dart picked over him. So it's very interesting how this worked out behind the scenes, why teams didn't want Shedeur Sanders, and really one of the craziest draft stories that I've seen in recent memory in an NFL draft. Now, right now I'm going to be talking about my biggest winners of the NFL draft. We're going to kind of transition and talking about some teams who I think landed some good homes here. And this was the Chiefs, the Browns, the Chargers, the Giants, and the Raiders. The Chiefs addressed offensive tackle, running back, cornerback, and wide receiver with players like Simmons, Smith, Williams, and Royals. And overall, it just gets an A+ for me. I think this was great pickups in the first round. You get more protection for Mahomes and being able to protect him on the offensive line. I think that's a great pickup. They really needed a running back. They got that with Williams. They got wide receiver, which they really don't need as much, but Royals is a solid wide receiver 4 or 3. And then the cornerback, you can never be too good on defense. The Chiefs are notoriously good at getting corners in the 3rd and 4th round. And then moving on to the Browns, one of the most, again, interesting storylines to see how this is going to be playing out. They got the running back, a quarterback, defensive end, linebacker, and then 2 first-rounders next year, the original pick, and then the pick from Jacksonville from the trade this year. So it'll be interesting to see, who's going to be the new starting quarterback, what the defense is going to be looking like. It's going to be exciting for the Browns. And then the Chargers, they got a running back, a wide receiver, an edge, tight end, and all these are very good options for the Los Angeles Chargers. And under Jim Harbaugh as the head coach, it's going to be very exciting to see how this team improves, because you're in a division with Andy Reid, Pete Carroll, and Sean Payton. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how they utilize all of these players. And I feel like it's going to be a drastic improvement from last year, and they're definitely going to be higher up in the playoffs when it comes to seeding this year, as well as how far they go. Now, the last 2 I have here are the Giants, and the Giants will also be a fun one as they got a QB in Jackson Dart in the late first round with pick 25, and then the edge with Abdul Carter, and then they got a running back and Cam Scatabo. So really, really going to be fun to see how these big-time players, all of them were pretty notorious and pretty great players in college, so it's going to be interesting to see how the Giants utilize them in the upcoming season. You already have great players in place on that team, so maybe the Giants can sneak into the playoffs. We'll see. We'll see how they do this year with the people they selected in this round. Moving on to the final team I have here, I have the Las Vegas Raiders, and they mainly improved with the 3 areas they needed the most, which was running back, wide receiver, and cornerback. Again, the most notable being Ashton Genty, absolute superstar running back in college. Now it's going to be interesting to see how he translates to that NFL journey. Is he going to be as good in the NFL? Will he be someone like Marshawn Lynch, who was an absolute beast mode? Can he do it for the Las Vegas Raiders? we'll have to wait and see, but I'm super excited about all these teams' potential and where they could be going from here. And overall, I think this draft class will be really exciting to see how they progress in the summer and going into the fall when the season starts. Again, this was a draft class going in where a lot of analysis are saying this wasn't a talent-loaded class, but then we got a really exciting draft where you had big first-round trades and then you had the late-round pickups like Shedeur Sanders. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see where these players go from here. And if you're interested for more about the 10-Minute Blitz podcast, be sure to tune into the next episode where we talk about new storylines and new perspectives in the NFL. And as always, everybody, until next time, have a great day, have a great week.